Hello, I'm John Adams, and in this video lesson we're going to take a look at how we can sharpen landscapes. Now, to start with, sharpening is not a magic fix for a blurred, out of focus picture. If you've got this kind of blurry blob in your foreground that's supposed to be the subject, then no amount of sharpening is going to turn it into a pin-sharp image. Blurred is blurred, out of focus is out of focus, so that isn't what sharpening does. What sharpening does is applies a little bit of extra contrast to the edges within a picture, and that gives an apparent look of more sharpness, and is particularly useful when you're making a printout. Just about every digital image requires a little bit of sharpening, and we're going to look at how you can do that with landscapes in mind. Now, if you open up Path JPEG from the disk, the first thing we're going to do is make a copy of it. There's a really quick way of doing this if we just get into our Layers palette, and to do that hit F7 in Photoshop or hit F11 in Elements, and we'll just look at a Layers palette and we're going to make a copy. So just hit Ctrl and J and you make an instant copy like so. Once you've done that, we want to go in nice and tight into this rock at the bottom corner of the image here. So pick up the zoom tool, then just click a few times on this rock itself in the bottom right corner until it's nice and large in the frame. So we'll keep clicking there until we get to about 200%. Now, if we just move our Layers palette over to one side, let's look at that rock now. Now, hopefully on your screen you can see what I can see here, and it all looks a little bit fuzzy. If I go in even tighter still, it becomes more apparent. There's not that sharp, crisp detail here. It's just a little bit fuzzy around all the edges. And what sharpening does is restores those edges to a sort of a crisp look. Now, what we'll do, we'll use our standard sharpening technique. We'll just go up to Filter, Sharpen, and select Unsharp Mask, or it's Enhance Unsharp Mask if you're using Elements. Click on that and you get this dialog box. Now, if we use some fairly standard settings, 150, 1 and 0, let's just get that to 150. There we go. You can either move the sliders or just highlight the box and key in the numbers you want. You can see there, if we click the preview button on and off, that by applying the sharpening filter, everything kind of snaps into focus. And that's what the sharpening's doing. It's finding edges within the picture, high contrast areas, and just applying more contrast to those areas to give the impression of a sharper result. By doing that, you can see exactly what's happening. So give that a try with the image, and then try it also with your own pictures as well. Now let's see where it doesn't go quite so well. We'll click OK to that to accept that sharpening across the image. Then we're just going to pick up the hand tool and just scroll all the way up to the top of the picture here. Let's get up to the sky. There we go. We're up to the sky and we'll find this mountain ridge. And oh dear, if you go in tight on that, you can see it's not so pretty. Let's just zoom in a couple of clicks. You can see there we've got a nasty bit of fringing going on, and we've got sort of an over-sharpening of JPEG artifacting as well happening. So it's not looking very nice at all, this part of the image. And if we bring back our layers, we can see by switching off the sharpen layer, layer 1, we can see how it was originally. And it's actually much better. The slightly softer look of the unsharpened image is preferable to this rather nasty-looking sharpened effect with jagged edges and extra haloing and all sorts of things. So what we ideally want is the sharpness being applied down in this part of the image where it makes a difference and makes it look better, and the sharpness not being applied in the top half of the image where it's actually breaking up the picture and making it look worse. So how do we do that? Well, because we've used these two layers here, and we've got the sharpness on layer 1 and the original untouched image underneath, all we have to do is pick up our eraser tool. Let's get it right now. Get a nice large brush there. We've got 400. Let's go up a bit bigger. 800 pixels there. All we're going to do is rub out the top half of the image where we don't want the sharpening. Remember, we're on layer 1, which is sharpened. Rub that out, and we'll get rid of that effect where we don't want it, and just leave it where we do want it. And you can see in the Layers palette, by doing that, we're left with this big hole in the top layer, so only this part will be sharpened, and all the rest of it will just show through from beneath. So that's a great simple way of controlling your sharpening and making sure it's selective, i.e. the sharpening is only going in the areas where it has a good effect, and it's not being used in areas where it destroys the image. So that's a great one to bear in mind. And while we're talking about that particular technique, if you're using the full version of Photoshop, you can do exactly the same thing in a slightly more controllable way using layer masks. Let's quickly have a look at that before we move on to another sharpening technique. We'll get back to our starting point. We'll just ditch that layer 1 there. So we've got rid of that altogether by dragging it to the trash in the layers palette. And what we're going to do is go through exactly the same technique that we started with. So we've got our original background layer. We're going to hit Ctrl and J to copy that layer. Then we're going to sharpen it, filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. We'll apply an amount of 150, radius of 1 and a threshold of 0 levels. Click OK to put that across the entire image. And then instead of erasing, we're going to make a selection. So pick up the freehand lasso tool here and then make a selection around the area that you want to keep the sharpening effect on. So we'll just draw around here. It's round about here. Just do a nice wobbly line across the path there, and then perhaps build it up there. That's good. Then all the way around the bottom of the image, back to the starting point. There's our selection around the area that we want to keep the sharpening effect. What we're now going to do is soften the edge of that selection with a bit of feathering. Now in older versions of Photoshop, use Select Feather. If you're using version CS3 or higher, or for those using Elements, anyone using Element 6 or 7, just go to the Refine Edge button, click on that, and go for a feather amount of about 150 pixels. So about 150 in the feather radius there. Once you've done that, click OK. So what we now have is a soft edge selection of the bottom half of the image. And you'll love this bit. All we're going to do is add a layer mask. And it's so simple. Once that selection's made, all you do is click the Add Layer Mask button and everything else is taken care of. That instantly applies the sharpening from this layer and removes the sharpening from the top half. So where it's black, you have no sharpening. Where it's white, you have the sharpening effect. And that's it. So it's a really simple way of adding sharpening. And of course, if we zoom in tight, let's just go into roughly where the join would be. That's somewhere between our two sharpening parts. If you want to add more sharpening, just press X on the keyboard to swap to white, and you can paint that in, and that will add the sharpening effect wherever you like. So you can put it into all the way down the path if you want to do that. You can sharpen up the grass, and hopefully you can see that happening in front of your very eyes. We're just painting white into the mask, and that's given us our sharpening effect wherever we want to paint it. So that's a great way to use that same sharpening technique with a little bit more versatility than the erasing technique you'd use for elements. Right, so there we go, that's unsharp mask. But what else is useful for landscape images? Well, there's a very neat technique that only a few people seem to know about, and it's called high pass sharpening. Let's take a look at that next. What we'll do is just get back to scratch on this, so we'll remove our mask layer there. There we go. So we've got our original background image here, which is the path.jpg that you'll find on the disk. We'll kick off with that again. And what we're going to do is very similar to what we did in the Photoshop layer mask idea. We just pick up our lasso tool and we decide which areas we want to sharpen. So let's say we go for that same area, wiggly line, something like that. So that foreground area that immediately grabs the viewer's attention is the part where we want the sharpening effect to be. Now we're going to feather this amount, so again that's Refine Edge. Feather slider set to about 150 pixels and click OK. Then we'll see our marching ants saying that we have a selection here, and we're going to punch this selection now into a new layer, which of course is Ctrl and J. So there it is, there's our feathered or our soft edge of the selection as layer 1 sitting above the background. Now we haven't done any sharpening yet, and that's what we're going to do next. But we're going to use a special blending mode. So where it says normal in the layers palette, click there and pick something from the overlay group. Overlay will actually do to start with, so we'll pick the headliner of that group of blending modes. Click on that and you'll see that the image goes a bit contrasty and kind of a bit saturated. Don't worry too much about that because we're not finished yet with it. What we're now going to do is use a weird filter called High Pass. And you'll find that if you go to the filter menu, come down to where it says Other, and then you'll see High Pass in a flyout sub-menu. Click on High Pass and you get a weird sharpening effect. If we actually just bring that down a bit, you can see that's the part of the image. It's a weird grey effect where you can see the edges of the image. And that's what's doing the trick. It brings out the edges, the High Pass filter. And a radius of 10 pixels is normally about right for most images. So we're going to run with that setting of 10 pixels and click OK. Now if we zoom in on that foreground area, we can see what's going on. There we have it. This is our sharpened area. If we click the eye icon, or the visibility icon on layer 1, we can see that's without the high pass sharpening and the overlay blending mode, and that's with it. And you can see a big difference. It's again like it's snapping into sharp focus. And the great thing is you can then experiment with the how you use the blending mode, or even change the blending mode itself. If it's too strong, this particular effect, all you need to do is grab hold of the opacity slider and back it off a little bit. You can take it down to kind of, somewhere between 60 and 80% to get a gentler effect from the high pass sharpening. Alternatively, you can use a different blending mode, and that's really up to you to experiment with. Click where it says overlay, and you've got soft light, which gives a subtly different effect, and indeed hard light gives a much stronger effect. The others won't be too good unless you have a particularly weird image. Vivid light is a bit too strong there. It's starting to posterize and break up the image. Linear light goes too far again. But occasionally there are images, or if you're doing a very graphic looking image, where these might be useful. So don't be afraid to experiment with different blending modes if you feel the need to do so. But I'm going to go for the original overlay on this particular image. I'm going to back off the effect to around about 80%. And then if we just come back to full screen, we can have a look at it in all its glory. And that's doing the job well. And of course, once you're happy with your image and you like the look of the sharpening you've got, all you need to do is flatten the image. And to do that, just go to the flyout arrow at the side of the layers palette, click on that and select Flatten Image. And those two layers, the high pass sharpening layer and the original background layer, will be flattened into a new single background image. Okay, we'll give that a go. Give high pass sharpening a whirl, because I think you'll like it, and see how you get on with your own pictures. Thanks for listening.